Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to my channel. And today, me, busy mom, is taking some time to sit down and have the conversation about how to have conversations with people that we disagree with. So let's dive right into it. Is the purpose of an argument to win? What is the motivation of communication in general? Is it connection? Is it sharing information? Is it expressions of opinions and thoughts? Is it sharing energy? What happens when two people disagree? How does a conversation continue on from there? And what typically happens? Is it possible to explore a more conscious way of relating to each other and talking about disagreements? Can we use curiosity and respect as ways to help facilitate real dialogue? And is compassion at all useful in this process? I want to talk to you about a man named Daryl Davis. I heard about him on a podcast that I listened to, and he is an amazing musician. I just looked up his bio on his page, and he's also a very interesting man. He's a Black jazz musician who in his musical journey came across a man who was a white supremacist KKK member. And they had a conversation, and it turns out that this KKK member had never even talked to a person of color before. And so Daryl Davis and this man eventually became friends, and eventually this man ended up giving him his robes and leaving the KKK. And after this, Daryl Davis has continued this way of life, and he has now indirectly affected over 200 KKK members who he's had conversations directly, 40 to 60, it said on his Wikipedia, and indirectly over 200 people who have left the KKK, specifically in his area that he's in, but also people from seeing interviews, because he has had the patience to sit down with people who hate him, who believe lies about him and his race, and he's been able to patiently have conversations explaining to people his point of view and his perspective. Now, in the description below, I'm going to link a couple things about him. I'm going to link an interview, a little clip of an interview. I'm also going to link his page and his Wikipedia page. So here's a quote from him in the interview that's linked below. Joe Rogan asks him, how can you sit there and listen to people just speak these lies about you? And he said, I will sit and I'll listen to that, and I'll put up with that, because in order for me to speak my mind, I have to listen to somebody else's. One's perception is their reality, and you can't change their reality, but you can offer them a different perception. So right on. And then he goes on to tell an example of a boy who goes to a magic show, and he sees a woman go up on stage, and she gets sawed in half, and she goes home, and he goes home and he tells his brother, like, oh my goodness, I saw magic, it was real magic. And the older brother is like, well, you didn't really see magic, it was an illusion. And the little boy's like, no, it was I was there, you didn't see it, you weren't there. He's thoroughly convinced that what he saw was magic. And then the older brother goes on to explain the details of how the illusion is set up, and by the end, the little brother is able to say, okay, all right, I can see how that could be a thing. So it's an example of how he changed the perspective of the younger brother and offered him a different reality, which is that rather than actual magic, it was actually an illusion that was set up. And so Daryl Davis is somebody who I look at and I'm just like, man, he has got to have like some super patience, and he's calm, he stays calm, he doesn't get all mad and yell. I mean, like, think about the qualities that a person would have to calmly sit there and listen to lies being spoken to them and to calmly suggest something different. So, as I've been contemplating this idea of exploring more conscious communication, I can't help but think about the examples of communication that I have in my world when I turn on the TV and see news shows where people are like yelling at each other or just insulting each other or criticizing each other. And I want to keep in mind that talk news shows is not a good gauge for enlightened conversation. You know, they're there for ratings, they're there to make money. Evidence shows that human brains are just more drawn to negative things. So unfortunately, we see these images of really intense and unaware conversations where people are just trying to overpower each other and trying to belittle and insult each other rather than actually exploring what is the truth. So I've come up with some concepts, some ideas. These are just my ideas. I've been mulling it over for a couple weeks. I'm curious about your ideas too, because I'm not saying I've got it all right, and I'm not saying that I'm always perfect at this, but this is the goal, I think. And it's something that I practice more and more and more. So here are just some ideas about conscious communication. Be grounded in your body. So I have a very sophisticated picture. This is two people having a conversation. They start yelling and arguing, and this person gets really amped up and they just throw their energy at this person here. So he's just overpowering, right? He gets mad, he's yelling, no, you're an idiot, no, I'm right, you're wrong. Ah. And I don't know if you've ever had that happen. It feels like, oh, like you've just been punched in the gut, or it had an arrow to the gut. That's because there's literally energy that's coming to your chakra. This is the third chakra. It's the power chakra. It's the place where if we're open, there's like this shield so we can come and protect ourselves. So what happens when a person is attacked? They're going to put up a shield and they're going to protect themselves, and all of a sudden it's going to shut down this conversation and it's not going to continue, and neither person is going to walk away satisfied or happy from the conversation. Now, this is what happens when two people have a conversation and they're grounded in their energy. So this person is grounded in their energy field is flowing here. And so this person too, grounded in their energy, and the energy field is flowing around them. They feel confident and strong because they're taking in the energy that they need from this infinite source and grounding it into the earth. And then what happens is, as we're aligned, centered, and grounded, then we can have our hearts open. And so our hearts become not only our shield, but our way to interact with and connect with the world. So as we have these conversations, it's honoring the sovereignty of this person and the intelligence of this person and the sovereignty and intelligence of this person. And it's energetically taking responsibility for yourself. So this is just my take on this, and I know that there are others who see the world in terms of energy, and some of you might be listening to this going like, that's complete hogwash, I don't buy into it, da da da. I hear you, and I understand that it's a little bit difficult to understand relating to this world of energy if that's not how you experience it. But for me, I do experience the world in terms of energy, and it's my play and interaction with each human. It's a very energetic experience. It's as real to me as any other experience. And as I've learned to make sense of it, and as I've learned to come to awareness of that, I've been able to be much more compatible with interacting with the universe and interacting with my world around me, and with my understanding of what's happening around me. A book that I came to really recently was by Dr. Bruce Lipton. It's called The Biology of Belief. He has an updated edition, and it's a great place to start if you have trouble intellectually understanding or being open to the idea of energy. It talks about kind of on a microbiological level how this actually kind of can be, scientifically speaking. Be grounded in your body. Communication is energy. When we throw energy at other people, they shut down. So if our objective is not to overpower the other person, if our objective is not to be right, to win the argument, then what is the objective? Well, I've been pondering the idea that the objective of communication could be curiosity for the truth. If we value the truth above all, which I value truth pretty freaking high on my list, then my ultimate goal is not to be right. It's not about my ego winning an argument, but it's about exploring truth. And so if what I perceive or believe or think is actually the truth, it will reveal itself. The truth doesn't need me to fight for it. And it's also possible that the actual truth is somewhere in between the two people that are having the conversation. So be calm, be confident, and be logical in your truth, right? Speak with respect to the other person. Truly listen to what they have to say. These are things that I'm practicing too. Truly listening to what not being that person. God, I used to be this person where someone would be talking and I'd be thinking about the next thing I was going to say so that I could have that response and just One thing I've had to recognize in communication is that I'm a very fast communicator, and that can be overwhelming for some people and literally just shut down the conversation. So for people like me, bringing it back and taking a moment just to slow it down so that people have a chance to take in what we are saying. Also, reminder, I try to remind myself to be aware of my energy and what my body feels like as I'm having a conversation. So if I'm starting to feel agitated, if I'm starting to feel anxious, if I'm starting to raise my voice, if I'm starting to get angry, gosh, I was having a conversation with someone and they just pounded their fist on the table. And then they were like, oh, I just pounded my fist on the table. I guess I'm getting fired up. Just having moments to check in and go, okay, where am I at right now in this conversation? I have this theory that a person who does not know their mind confidently or who's repeating the programming is not going to want to hear someone else's thoughts. And so, just understand that, and understand also that there's this thing called cognitive dissonance. So even if this person is believing something that is untrue, and in our last video we talked a little bit about, or one of our last videos we talked a little bit about conspiracy theories. Let's just say you're talking to somebody and you think that what they believe is a conspiracy theory, and part of you also thinks how could they even be smart to believe this or think this? Well, taking a moment to openly listen to what they have to say and truly considering it for a minute shows having an open mind. That you can listen to them go on about this or that without getting triggered, and then confidently speak your truth. I have a friend was talking to me about something, and I was able to say yeah, I found things that they said that I was able to say, we do have this in common. And also on these points, I actually have a different perspective. Would you like to hear it? So also, when it starts getting about yelling and shouting, all of a sudden that's a distraction from the real issues, isn't it? So if it starts to get really fired up, just taking a moment just to remind yourself that being all fired up means that they're actually really passionate about what they're saying, right? So one of the things that I found that was so frustrating during the last couple years is that I'm a person that likes to look at both sides of a subject. So I would listen to a podcast or an interview or a conversation about some of the issues that were happening in the past couple years and get some really detailed studies, information, things like this. And then I would go to look at the other side of the perspective because I wanted to have a balanced perspective. And instead of debating point by point the things that people were saying, they were simply just trying to discredit that person or say that they were unreliable as a resource. But in my opinion, that was a distraction from the actual points that were being made. And so one thing I've learned from paying attention to the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial is that is something that lawyers try to do. They will try to discredit a source rather than attacking all of or logically having a conversation about each of the informational topics. So that's something that I really find to be more convincing. If a person is just attacking the speaker as a whole and just discrediting them, and sometimes it's not even true what they're saying, what these ones are saying, then I start to become a little bit suspicious. It's like, well, are you not intelligent enough to debate these topics? Or are you not educated enough? Or is there not information on, to contradict these topics? Like, what is the reason that you're distracting us from the actual conversation that's been happening? So, and when that starts to happen, people start to amp up. They may just get to a point where they just kind of shut down, and they might just be repeating phrases that they've heard in other places. They may not even really know why they feel so strongly about what they feel. And again, at that point, I think you're not going to argue a person just because they shut down. It doesn't mean you've won the argument. And just because you might think you won the argument, it doesn't mean that any closer consensus to truth, understanding, and has happened. And also, if at the end of the day, you all who were friends can't walk away and still be friends, or go have a meal together, or go play pass, well, then was that a constructive conversation? Is the point more important than the relationship and the connection with our fellow humans? So one of the things to keep in mind, I try to keep this in mind so often when I start to get amped up, I have to remind myself that I cannot control other people. I can only control myself. And what that means, one of the things I learned from the temple is whenever I'm really feeling triggered and amped up, actually that is a sign that there's something inside of me that's being mirrored for me to look at. And so I was taught that these kinds of things outside of ourselves are mirrors, and when we butt up against them and it triggers us, that's a sign for us to go inside. And so when I'm feeling really strongly like I need to control this other person, that is a clue for me to look within myself and go, okay, why am I actually getting so mad right now when this started as a conversation about such and such, and so then it gives it that opportunity for self-reflection, self-awareness, and the path is about practicing observing our minds. Because if we are on a path of self-awareness, if we are on a path of thinking for ourselves, that means that we are being committed to exploring where our minds are being programmed. And that is really freaking hard to challenge ourselves. But this is the path. And so, it may not happen in the moment. Sometimes it takes, hours later or days or weeks of contemplating this idea or what's going on inside of ourselves before we start to recognize that, oh, I have a belief in my mind, a subconscious belief about this. And actually, it's really based in something I was taught by this institution or that institution, or maybe the belief, is something that we truly believe. But at least we can recognize why we're having the triggers that we're having. And there are actually things that people can do to work on their triggers to neutralize the charge, essentially. And that is a whole nother conversation and practice. But this also means that we can allow ourselves to be open to new information and be curious. And it's not a blow to our ego for somebody to say something and it's like, oh, I didn't know that. That's really interesting. Can you tell me more about that? Or, even just being honest, I have to admit, I'm feeling quite upset right now, but this doesn't mean I don't respect you and your ideas. I'm just feeling really triggered. That's taking responsibility for the experience that you're having, rather than saying, you're just an idiot and I cannot believe that you would think that. If it's just shifting that perspective. So again, if the goal is actually truth rather than being right, then we can practice curiosity and shift the way that we're interacting with people and still show respect in conversations. And just having compassion. If a person's really angry or they're really convinced of something that we think is preposterous, well, have compassion for that. Have compassion for where they're coming from, because clearly they're still on the journey of learning what they believe and what their own personal thoughts are. Not everybody is on a journey of thinking for themselves, and it's not fair of us to hold other people to that standard. I am guilty of this all the time. I hold people to the standard that I hold my own self to, and it gets me in trouble, because then people start to feel shamed, they start to feel stupid, they start to feel inadequate, when the reality is our job is to be responsible for ourselves in our own mind. And if people want help, if they want ideas, they'll ask. I'm making these videos for somebody just like you. If you've gotten this far ahead, I am just so excited that you're here. I'm so excited to be connecting with you and having these conversations, and I'm excited for us to explore new ways to shape our society. We've been handed these patterns from our grandparents and our parents, and we've just accepted this culture as if it's just something to be accepted. But you know what? We as people, we as humans, we can choose something different. So, in closing, I will say compassion is very helpful and gratitude is very powerful. Gratitude really brings the whole thing back around, because if we can look back and think and grow ourselves from the interaction, then we can have gratitude for the experience and gratitude for our fellow human beings, and understand that the whole point of this human experience is the experience and the journey. So thank you for being on this journey with me. Thank you for having this conversation. Just to summarize a little bit, in our video on conspiracy theories, we talked about how to evaluate news sources for their authenticity. And we established that no person on this planet is truly neutral. We all have bias. It's important to recognize our bias, acknowledge our bias, and then own our bias. It's important for us to take time to sit down and figure out what our values are, so we can understand where we are coming from and what is most important to us. We also established in a previous video that once we know our values, then we can recognize that not everybody has the same values. We also established that according to the principles of universal morality, we are not entitled to hurt or threaten other people except in situations of self-defense. And so the further extension is now in this conversation, in conversations, rather than being tempted to give into this idea that we need to overpower a person, that we need to be right, that we need to prove them wrong, we can have conversations that are aligned with our values of how we want to see community happen. And we can boldly and firmly speak our truth within the context of our values without devaluing the other person and without criticizing and insulting the other person. We can speak our truth firmly, confidently, logically, calmly. I think I just said that. While also being present with compassion and gratitude. Yay for life. Thank you guys for the comments. Thank you for watching. Thanks for the conversation, and stay tuned for more.